when Edward Snowden came out, I guess that was 2014, I had been saying very publicly that the NSA was gathering our information, and there were a couple different former NSA employees that got raided by the FBI, and they were saying these things too, like, hey, they're gathering your information, et cetera. And so when Snowden did the release, I was like, finally, everybody's going to know.
American hero. I got a painting of him in my office.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, this guy's awesome.
It's amazing.
That's the guy that loves our country.
Yes.
Who's somehow in Russia.
Yeah. But the way the country reacted, nobody seemed to care. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. They've been diving into our emails or checking our text messages.
My mom's like, he's a traitor.
Yeah.
I'm like,
what are you talking about? This is as patriotic as it gets. And I actually lost a lot of, passion after Snowden, because a lot of the things that I had been called crazy about for years came true, and nobody cared. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I was just working on issues that nobody, this isn't important. People are too far gone. And then, fast forward to where we're at today, and a lot of the those conversations are now open and public, and the Democratic Party now, because back then the Republicans were against all that. The Democratic Party now is
for it all.
Yeah, they're for the wars.
Big pharma, it's crazy.
Cutting censorship. They're all for censorship. They're all for the wars. They're all for, like you said, big pharma. And I've watched it shift, but it's the same people that before were for freedom of speech and those type of things. So, it's kind of confusing as a human.
Yeah, I always say, I believe I'm a little more liberal than Obama was in 08. So he was against same-sex marriage in 08.
Yeah.
I'm not. And so, but outside that, I believe most of the things he believed. He was anti-war. He was,
supposedly.
And so, and I always say that, obviously tongue in cheek, but it's funny to think just how crazy that shift has happened. Because it's nobody realizes. I mean, I think they do, but it's pretty crazy that RFK Jr. is supporting Trump. That's a pretty crazy. I've always said, hey, I think Bernie Sanders and Trump are more aligned than people realize.
Agreed.
There's this one little thing, which is a big thing over capitalism, but outside of that, they're both for better education, better healthcare, anti-war, freedom of speech. And so I've always loved people that aren't owned by anybody, even though I completely disagree with them. At least Bernie Sanders isn't owned by anyone.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And so that is something I respect in people. Is hey, at least you're not, because there's, you look at Kemp in Georgia. It's that guy clearly is owned by somebody.
The establishment.
And we'll be curious what happens this year, but definitely over the next 30 years is what I'm planning. Is all right, I don't know where, that's why I try not to put myself anywhere. I'm here's my beliefs, I think, human life's pretty important. I think America is a pretty great country that could be better, and we should work to make it better. And I think college is a scam. I know, being on the record for that, I know where this is headed. I watched what people thought about that 20 years ago versus what they thought now. I know in another 20 years it's over for them.